Eddie, how you doing?
Hi, Paul. How are you?
I'm very well. Look, first of all, thank you so much for agreeing to do this one-on-one interview. You know, I know you. You know, we met many years ago when I came in to do the rum shop back in the day. And we've met again in stuff like Urban Synergy, which we'll probably touch on later on. But I wanted to get a feel for how you became the Eddie Nestor we know today. You know, 0 to 10. What was your upbringing? Where were you brought up? That sort of stuff.
I'm a Hackney kid. Went to what was known as the worst school in Hackney, Upton House. I failed my 11 plus, and that was a big moment. I didn't know it at the time, but it was a big moment because I was a bright kid, you know, and it was a school called Hackney Downs, which is now Broxbourne Academy. I didn't get in, and I went to Upton House, and yeah, it's a tough school. That's I meet a lot of people who were at Upton House, and there's a kind of resilience that comes out of going to a place like that where you have to survive by your wits. I mean, it was a tough place, really, if I'm honest.
Okay, so how did that young child, that young man, become in the media? I know you started with stuff like the Real McCoy. How did you get to that?
I had a teacher, and I always talk about this teacher because I think it's really important when you know, as a parent, to understand this. I had a teacher called Mr. Stansfield, and when I was 11, I said to him I wanted to be a lawyer. I knew that I could speak. I could always speak. I wanted to be a lawyer, and he said to me, I think you should set your sights more realistically.
Ouch.
And that's come to be a point that I reference often in my life, because it was the point at which I stopped studying, I stopped focusing, I stopped dreaming, and I stopped having ambition. If I'm honest, I didn't know it at the time. Of course, I'm only talking retrospectively, Paul. And yeah, I met a man called Malcolm Morrison, who was a drama teacher, and there was a play, and they were auditioning for the part of Scrooge. It's really weird because I've played that part now twice in my life, Scrooge, and in the other thing called a thing with a group called a posse called Pinchy, Kobe and the Seven Duppies. I don't know what it is about me that make people think I'm old, mean, and miserable. I can't think.
I can't think either, Eddie. I can't think either. Why on earth would they think that?
Why would they think so? So I did that, and then my mum reminded me the other day. I'm a big old greyback man, and my mum reminded me. You remember I take you to your first audition? I did Scrooge, and people thought, "Oh, we didn't know you could do that." And then I auditioned for the National Youth Theatre of Great Britain, and I had to learn 2 pieces. One contemporary, and it was a piece called Sus. Again, it was on point, but I didn't know it at the time. And the other one was from the Scottish play, a speech, Time Thou Anticipates My Dread Exploits. I still remember it today. And so I went and I auditioned for the National Youth Theatre. I got in, and God, I tell you, I was the only person like me in that room. And I was like, I didn't know that world existed. I'm a Hackney kid. I traveled up and down on a number 6 bus. I did all the things that Hackney kids did. I saw middle class. I'd never seen it before. I didn't know it existed. I didn't know the tears, the anxiety, one of the examples I tell Paul is, when we're broke, right? So we ain't got no money. You're talking about, trying to fry a potato or boil potato because the water is there. They say, I'm so broke. I think I'm going to have to go to Argentina for a month and just relax.
Oh,
I want to be broke like you. So, again, that was a whole eye-opener for me, really. But I didn't really know at that time I was developing what I could talk about it now. I didn't talk about it much before, and I haven't really talked about it in very many interviews. But at that time, I was developing my dependency, which I didn't know, which was to cause me problems for decades to come.
You know what? It's funny because I just did a bit of research on you, and you know, you talk about those times, and you would have been growing up in the UK while I was growing up at the same time in Jamaica, because you were born 1964, I was born 1964. You know, you wouldn't know it looking at us.
I could be your son.
Yeah, you keep hoping that, yeah. But what was it like? Because I don't know what it was like growing up as a teenager in the UK. Yeah, because I didn't. What was it like growing up as a teenager? When you had that teacher who tried to crush your aspirations.
But they didn't know it at the time. This is the thing, I'm just checking out Akala's book. I'm doing a lot more reading now, studying. That's the thing that I'm doing. And I think that perspective is a wonderful thing, and which is why I'm glad that you wrote the book. Curtis has written a book, Andrew's written a book, and I know there's a book in me, but when I write the book, I'm going to lose a lot of friends because I can only write it one way. So there's a couple of people wait for them to dead before I write it, if you understand what I mean.
I get it.
Because when the easiest way to tell you about my youth is that I didn't really like my dad very much at first. And I remember my dad was a typical guy. He gave mum the money and then he went and drank the rest of the money. And I started to resent him as I got older, and I became more conscious, cooking food, washing plates, none of that, right? And then in 1981, I went to work with my father, who was a carpenter. When I saw the way my father had to deal with the white supervisor, or foreman as he used to call him, when I saw the way my dad worked and the hours he worked and how good he was at his job, I understood a lot more about why my dad was the way he was at home. He had to make a lot of compromises so in his house he could be a man. And it was really weird because we lived in Hackney, so we had to drive, and the job was it was deep in South London. So when I was working with my dad, two amazing things happened. And again, it's only perspective. This is all for the book, which is that the riots of 1981 were happening. And so I was driving past those boarded up houses, shops, and the like. And Ian Botham and Bob Willis were dismantling the Australians. I mean, a kind of sporting feat that you never really hear of in the way that it happened. I mean, if you
never heard of, eh?
Do you know the moment I'm talking about? I mean, I thought you were in Jamaica, but I mean, this was just startling what those two human beings did. Kind of, again, another life lesson. I mean, 81 was a big year for me, really, in terms of life lessons, because anything is possible. I tell my children now, never give in, no matter what, no matter how bad it is, no matter what is going against you, never, ever, ever give in. And that's what those guys did. So when I went to work with my dad, I never had another crossword with him really again after that, because I understood. I got it. And I held him as the king that he was.
Let's move up the chain. How did you meet Eddie? No, you're Eddie. How did you meet Robbie?
Don't worry. My mum does it. So when people do it, I have to say, listen, it's okay. My mum does it. My mum calls me right. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, I met him with it would have been around about the same time, actually, 81. I think I met Rob through a guy called Trevor Etienne, who's now over in Hollywood doing his stuff. And Trevor was just a mover and a shaker, and he came with his little teeth in South London. And I didn't really like him. He's very flash. He was working in an accountancy, very confident. I was in awe of Robbie. I was in awe of Trevor. I was never confident because I was always the little flat-nosed ugly boy. That, in fact, one of the things my dad did, which I now, as I say again, retrospectively, I think is incredibly damaging, is my nickname was Ugly in my house. And ugly get me this, ugly get me that. And I guess it was a banter and it was a joke. And we're going to pay for the operation to get the bridge for your nose. And that was the thing in my house. And I didn't realize that it had impacted me psychologically, again, until later on. But when I met those guys, I was absolutely in awe of their confidence. I was in awe of the way they moved, the way they spoke, the way they dressed. I was like, wow. And mine was always, as it is to some extent even now, a kind of bravado, a kind of act, if you see what I mean. I've always assimilated to try and fit in to where I am. So it's a weird thing, isn't it? It's a kind of contradiction. It's a paradox, I suppose.
So you met Robbie, you did stuff like...
No, we didn't do anything. I met him in 1981 and I thought he was a flash show and stuff. And then we went and there was something under a guy called Larrington Walker. We all went to Dick Shepherd Youth Centre. And I mean, I could name you a lot of actors, black actors around now, who owe a lot to somebody like Larrington Walker, who's now passed away. And then a guy called Calvin Simpson died. He was an actor, and he was choreoing, so riding, and then he got crushed by a bus.
Oh.
And we all of a sudden thought, what are we doing? Where are we? We're young, active, confident guys, and for the most part anyway. And we started a collective called the Posse, and that's where I did Pinchy Kobe. That's where we did Armed and Dangerous. We got a commission from Channel 4 in the 90s, and Robbie was already famous because Robbie had done, I mean, Desmond's he was doing, and by that I hadn't joined the Real McCoy yet, but Robbie was in the beginning. So Real McCoy started, so we ended in 95. I did 3 series. So Robbie would have started that 89, 90, yeah. So Robbie was already famous, and then we started working there, and then he came to a gig I was doing at a club that you won't know called Shinola's in Hackney. And he just started to shout stuff out. He heckled me. And of course, bad man don't take that kind of chat. And I shouted back at him. I stepped up on the stage, we did it, and then both of us kind of went, people are laughing. Maybe. And then, you know, then we started to meet each other more, because then somebody came to see Pinchy Kobe and decided that I would be a guy called Cuthbert in a pub, Rubber Dub in the Real McCoy. I don't know if you remember that, Paul, but
oh yes,
yeah. So Robbie and I then started to work, and then in 92, 93, a guy called John Simmet, who runs something called the
know him too.
Comedy Club, yeah. He invited us up to Sheffield. I remember it so well. It was like £240, and Esmond had a wicked Mercedes. So I took £80, Robbie took £80, and we gave Esmond £80 for the petrol. And all we did was walk out on stage. And them times, the Real McCoy was properly hot. Yeah, it worked out really well. And that was the beginning.
How you know, we talk about the Real McCoy, and it's one of the first comedies that I enjoyed when I came to the UK. Yeah, oddly, the other one was Ramsey Nisbeth. Don't ask. I don't understand why I had those two.
I understand why you like that.
You did? Okay.
Yeah. But it's real. It was real. It was a guy not pretending to be nice, not pretending to just, you know, yeah, but nasty, you know, real. I like
Real McCoy was, for me, as someone who I didn't grow up here, I didn't have all of the references, you know, the Lovers Rock, all of that sort of stuff, but I absolutely loved it. And if we're going to talk Real McCoy, have to touch on Felix. Such a genius, really enjoyed his work. What was it like working with those people on the Real McCoy?
Well, Real McCoy, Felix was different, right? Because Felix came in, did his gig, and there was a little bit of resentment, if I'm honest with you, because he came in and he did his gig. He took 6 minutes, 7 minutes of a 25-minute show.
Nailed it.
Doing his thing. I'm like, hold on a minute, where did this brother come from? All of a sudden, and Man is here doing his thing and nobody ain't, you know what I mean? So it was which is even more of a travesty why he never got his own show.
Yeah.
Because out of all of us, he spoke the language, he trained as a lawyer, he had the look, he had the background, and he was safer than me, Robbie, Luella, and definitely safer than Leo Muhammad. So you would have thought that he would have had it. So let me talk about him, if you don't mind, as a separate entity, because I had a weird relationship with it. I knew that it was okay, but it was, I don't think anybody, if I'm honest with you, nobody got particularly close with Felix, and that's the way he wanted it. But there was a kind of begrudging something. I used to catch him looking at me, and I didn't know if it was he wanted to fuck, the way I catch my wife looking at me sometimes. And I don't know what it means, but I know it's not good. I know they're trying, what with this brother? Anyway, I'm going to take you off on this tangent. I promise I'll come back, because it's something that Angie referred to this week, and I wasn't able to properly contextualize it within a little skit thing we do. So I hadn't seen him for a while, and I used to tease him because he started growing locks, and it wasn't growing on all of his head. And I said, what are you, who are you, predator? Why don't you cut the thing off? How you got ball patch and locks? Whoever tell you said that ball patch and locks work? You can't even grow what I've, used to cuss me. You can't even grow what I've got. When you can grow what I've got, then you give me a comment. Man like you ain't got here, how you comment? So it was a bit like that. Anyway, he didn't turn up for a gig. And there was another gig where they told me that he was sitting there, and I know that things weren't great. I know that they weren't great. But then I was on the radio. And I got a message from the same John Summit, Hugh Edwards. Felix is sick, and he wants to see you. So as it turns out, Felix had a list of 12 people. You know, just give me a minute. He had a list of 12 people that he wanted to see. And I thought, the brother didn't want to see him when he's alive, but now he's dying, he wants to see him. What kind of foolish, I'm not, you know, I've never been to a hospice up until I have now, sadly. And I've never been one. And I don't know why, because it doesn't make sense what I did now. So I don't know why I did it. Maybe she will be able to tell you. I called Angie Lamar. And Angie was in a different series. It was called Get Up, Stand Up. So Angie didn't have anything to do with the Royal Card, but I've always acknowledged her as the queen of the circuit. I don't know why, but I went to the hospice. Maybe now I think, Paul, I didn't want to go on my own. How about that? I was
fair enough. Fair enough.
Let's be honest. I was scared. And I met Angie, and I said to Angie, do not cry in that place there. Whatever we do, you know how we have to behave.
Yeah.
She said, who are you telling? I said, all right, I'm just making sure. So I go in there, and he's out. The morphine is going. I mean, he's out. And I remember something really weird happened that just freaked me and Angie out. It was, but by that time he couldn't go to the toilet. He couldn't do anything. And the woman came in and she asked him if he's all right, if he wanted to be changed. And I tell you what, I'm a bit of a hothead, but I don't know, a bit of me died that minute because I thought, you've taken away the brother's dignity.
Yeah.
You're asking him that in front of me and Angie. And I know it hurt Angie bad because Angie's properly emotional, you know, she lives it. She's the truth, you know, and yeah. But on the other side of it, and this is why life is so complicated, we had one of the funniest moments because I said to him, because he's in and out of the morphine. I said to him, so I could see that he's got his present girlfriend, his past girlfriend is that, because now we're letting in twos, right? He's got his present girlfriend, his past girlfriend, and a girl he used to do a little something with. Angie, move. How you flexing? How you? He said, Eddie, I know. A couple of times they've all been in the room. And when I hear them talking, in any way that might be checking dates to see if they cross over, I just go, ah, theater! And then they all stop talking and focus on me. I said, this brother is funny even when he's dying. Paul, he's... Boy, I laughed for years about that. For years I've laughed about that. And then the next time I went to see him, he was a lot worse. And this time I had to bring Robbie with me. And of course, Robbie's very, very good at those situations. He's very, very good, because the people had to come in and tell us to be quiet. That's how much noise we were making. And he's far gone, and Robbie was gone with his, I think he'd gone with his Tottenham. I think Felix is an Arsenal. And it was all banter, and it was all, you know, it was a different vibe. And then I heard that he'd passed, and this really weird thing happened. You just stop me anytime you want, you know, you ask me to talk. But remember, that's what I do, I talk. So
your value for money, man.
No, listen to this story. You can tell me if this would freak you out. So now I hear that Felix passed, and it was a Friday. And I heard that he passed in the show, and the tears is running down my eyes, and I have to still do the show, because the show must go on. And then I get on the tube, because we've got a gig in Waltham Forest. It's October. And my memory serves me right. So around about the 18th, Felix passed. And I had to go. And by that time, I told Robbie, and Robbie was in a Met. And then we went out and did the show. And we had to make it good in his memory. Imagine doing a comedy show against the backdrop of a Comedy Genius day. It's a really weird thing, you know. It's a very strange thing. So now the Sunday, you like this, because you're dark. On the Sunday, my phone rings. And I pick up my phone, and I look at my phone, and it says, Felix Dexter. But the man is dead. How could he be ringing me? And it's his girlfriend ringing people because something's wrong with her phone to tell them about the arrangements. And I'm like, is it me? She's ringing people on the brother's phone after we heard the brother's dead to tell. I'm like, no, something ain't right. Something ain't right. But that's Felix anyway. That's the story. But you know, it's a very sad one. You know, you go to the cremation, you meet his mom. Yeah, it was a moment. It was a moment, I think, for all of us to kind of think what we're doing, where we're going, how we're going to develop.
How have you sustained yourself in the industry to now? Today, you're now at the BBC. I know you do other charity stuff, but you're at the BBC, the mainstay of your day. How have you sustained yourself in what sometimes can seem like a very difficult area of business?
Sometimes. Paul, you
make it look easy, dude.
Paul, one of the things that, and obviously I brought a lot of people up there now, and a few of us met yesterday at the end of the show. And one of the simplest things that I've tried to do that is really difficult. So they only phone you when we're talking about Black kids, mentoring, fathering. One of the most difficult things, and I implore people to listen to this and to think about it, is that the default guest for any show on news is a white male. And one of the things that I've annoyed more producers than you can imagine is I don't want any more white men. And it isn't because I don't like white men, right? It's that I don't only want to talk. If there's a gang something going on, you see Black people on telly like, wow, I didn't even know there were so many social workers, community activists, spokespeople for the community. When you hear terrorism, you see imams, you see this, you see that, you see that. And what I'm trying to say to people is, I had a Muslim woman on who's a microbiologist the other day. In fact, go into any chemist and see the person working behind there and tell me that 9 times out of 10 they aren't Asian. Go into any hospital and see consultants, see surgeons, and tell me that they aren't usually people of color or people who haven't been born in this country. So why, when we're looking for experts on everything, is it always represented by the same person? And I cannot, that's just one of the areas where I'm seen as being difficult. And the great thing about it is, here's where I don't think it's pernicious, right? Is that Vanessa will hear me with Paul or with somebody, she go, oh, he sounds really good. I want him. So once they hear it, so it isn't a conscious, we all do it. The default person, white guy in suit, and that's why we have the government that we've got, because if you speak in a posh way and went to a posh school, a private school, it is assumed that you are intelligent. But when you hear Jacob Rees-Mogg talking about why did people stay in the fire, why didn't you understand that that is not an intelligent man. And even if he is paper intelligent, he is not emotionally intelligent.
So I take it then that you
empathy, understanding, and that my greatest battle is to tell you that intelligence is packaged in any way. Tell me anybody you've ever seen more articulate and can sit down and want to watch more than a Carla. You tell me. You can't. And that's the point that I really try to make more than anything else. And that's the one that's causing me the biggest difficulty right now.
So you don't subscribe to the diversity of thought as Matt Hancock.
The diversity of thought idea means that you don't need any black person in any boardroom. You don't need any disabled person to be able to have a job. You don't need any woman who's going to have a baby to be employed. It's a stupid, idiotic, ridiculous thing to say. I think he knows it. I think she pressured him. I think she interviewed him brilliantly, and he didn't know what to say. He came up with Kwasi Kwarteng. Kwasi is not in the cabinet. He could have said, I would have said, we have an equalities minister. At this moment, we don't, but you look at Boris through his mayoralty, you look at Boris through his tenure as prime minister, and you cannot tell me that he is afraid of employing people no matter where they come from. Now, that is whether it's true or not is not the point. That is the answer that I would have given, and I just think his answer was atrocious. A diversity of thought means you never have to have a person of color at the table. 75% of people who are sight impaired don't have employment. I am told constantly by guests that the more diverse your workforce, the more profitable you'll be, the more inclusive you'll be, the more representative of your community that you'll be. I'm told that all the time. Then how is it not applicable in government? It's nonsense. It's nonsense.
And I think it belies the one of the things that we always talk about. These guys are not as smart as they'd like us to think they are. They're not as smart as they think they are. And I think it brings me to the question about the events of the day. We're doing this interview in and around this renaissance of Black awareness, where suddenly corporations all over the world are now suddenly embracing. I just saw that Ben & Jerry's are pulling away their advertising from Facebook and Insta because they want to say, you know, they're striking out against race or hate speech and so on. What's your view? What's your view on this awakening that we see happening? Is it going to last? Do you think it's genuine? Or what does Eddie Nestor think?
I think that we saw a moment, and I encourage everybody to go and look at Dave Chappelle's video. I mean, he doesn't need me.
8.46, yeah.
15 million people have already seen it, right? So I encourage them to watch it. I encourage them also to watch Sitting in Limbo, which I resisted watching, and I watched on Sunday, because within that, for me, it perfectly encapsulates the struggle. So the buzzword in this house at the minute is being grateful. Now, I always used to say to my boss when he came to me with something that I'm not grateful. And I didn't properly understand what I was talking about. But sometimes you do that. You know it's the right thing to do, say, but you don't know why. And now I understand it. I understand it through George Floyd. I understand what it means. Because if you look at what happened to Anthony and to Janet, the only reason you could question their very existence here is because they were people of color who had come from somewhere else. So it was a blessing that they were allowed to come, and a blessing that they were allowed to stay, and they need to justify that blessing.
That's right.
It is also
they're alleged children, yeah?
Well, yeah. Well, there is a problem now that we're looking at, that somebody like Glenda Caesar, who's also one of the Windrush babies, will tell you that. So she comes over on her mother's passport, all the documents have been shredded or evaporated or whatever. Her son is also an illegal alien because where does he belong? And there is another conversation about people having passports going away, but I'm not publicly prepared to have that conversation, right? That's a different conversation, and it's a much more nuanced, and out of context, that conversation could be used as a weapon, and I'm not prepared to do that. But in terms of this moment with George Floyd, and by the way, I think it's absolutely startling that on a program called The Pledge, I felt it at the time, Nick Ferrari can say to Afua Hirsch, when she's talking about monuments, then why do you stay here? You can only say it to a person of color. It was racist then, and it is racist now, absolutely beyond a shadow of a doubt. And, you know, so if you look at Windrush, not only should they have been grateful to be allowed in, to remain here, justify your claim to be a citizen, Glenda told me that she got offered £20,000. She'd been unemployed for 10 years. So if you work it out that she was on an average salary of £25,000, then you can't even start before you get to $250,000, because that's what she's lost in income. Then you talk about heartache, reputational damage, mental health, trauma. You talk about all of those. So now by offering her £20,000, you are saying you should be grateful that you're getting anything at all. Is that not right? Is that not how you see it? That's how I see it, right? So that word for me now is grateful. So to answer your question more specifically, it is a moment in time because it has made me think. I used to use language like my father, you know, and I am a joker and I have a Caribbean sense of humor. When I went to Dominica, they asked me if I was born there, which is a tough one. It's blue-black.
And a huge compliment, by the way.
And I accept it as, but it's not right for England because I don't live in Dominica, I don't live in Jamaica, I live in England. And what we need in England, what we needed, I get a reference to Carlo again. He talks about the fact that he made some money and he went to the bank and he went to put the money in the bank. And when he was putting the money in the bank, he saw another black guy that looked like him, dressed like him, also putting the money in the bank. And the Carla said, oh, I wonder what that brother did to get that money. So think about that. And he's woke. You know what I mean? We're not talking about, we're talking about somebody who is going to be a leader. He is already a leader, right? So those things that we have in our heads, and we talk about white people have it, we have it too. We have it as well when we look at people, and that's why I'm battling against the presentation of intelligence. Right? So because Piers is chewing up people left, right, and center. And Akala didn't rise, he didn't speak, he didn't raise his voice. He's not like me, he's not emotional. Just gave him a series of facts. A series of facts which backed that brute into a corner. You think me, as an inquisitor, could ever go and tell him, behave like Piers Morgan? You think I couldn't? So I don't watch it. I don't watch it. Don't watch it. It's not. Anyway, you make me sound like my father now. I was going down the road, and as I was walking, because I did have on these shoes, and these shoes I did buy from that shop over there. Did you remember? You're making me talk like my dad. Anyway, it is a moment in time, but as Curtis says, I'm starting with me. So the language I'm using, King Paul Lawrence, is positive language around my people. I'm married to a queen. My children are princes, because that is, I feel, where some of the problems are, in that we don't speak about ourselves positively. We read about rioting, killing, shooting, no dads, no whatever. And I think that for me, because I always start with me, right? Positive language, affirmation. In terms of the conversations with white people, and they beat me down, I've just asked for a couple of days off. I'm fed up of trying to explain to those who don't want to know what I'm talking about.
Not doing it no more. Not doing it.
I'm not, because if you don't know now, you don't want to know. So I focus on the people that go, wow, which I've had. I've had conversations with people that I never saw it like that. Because one of the things I've always said to the people at the BBC, and they won't listen to me, actually, you know, through the Jeremy Corbyn era, I was able to see something that I'd never seen before. I was able, because I always thought to myself, well, if the left ruled, and everything would be all right. They would look after sick people, people wouldn't be on the street, mental health would be a thing. And it doesn't, because it has its own way of working that's equally pernicious. Because if you say to somebody on the left wing, what you did there or your systems or whatever are racist, how could you say that? I've been on every single march. I've got a mixed race grandchild. And you go, well, none of that. I'm not talking about your mixed race grandchild. I'm not talking about whether you're a good person. I'm saying to you that we all have a bias.
Yeah.
We all have people that we're drawn to, things that we like, things that we assimilate to, things that we're impressed by. And unless you take a minute and recognize those, then how do you deal with it? By crying or getting defensive? You just block it. The chip on the shoulder. And now I say, yeah, I got the chip on my shoulder because you got your foot on my neck. So it's great for that. But it's a moment, Paul. And if we don't all seize that moment, you know, I was in a group the other day. I was in a group. And I'm always careful about what I say because I've spent my whole life walking on the line and the line moves in terms of what I can say because I work for the BBC. But I was in a chat group the other day, and it was one of the most frustrating conversations I've ever had, and I had to just stop. Group of black men, articulate, intelligent, explaining to me why then they don't go and buy things from people that look like them. It costs too much. And I'm like, well, how's it not going to cost more? If you keep going to the Chinese or to the Indian shop or to the, how's it not going to cost more? When you go to the Chinese shop, tell me who you see working in that Chinese shop. When you go to have an Indian takeaway, tell me who you see. When you go to the restaurant, tell me who you see going in there. I had a builder in my house from Bangladesh, lovely guy. And I felt uncomfortable. I didn't understand the language they were talking in my house. He never employed anybody else that didn't look like him. We are the only people who think it's racist for me to say, go and buy in a black shop or go and use a black builder and whatever. And I tried to get one, but the timing was wrong. And that's the bit. Somehow, somebody has convinced me, you, all of us, that it's racist for me to go to the black man shop or the black woman shop over there. And that is what we have to try to tackle, because our pound, the black pound, goes out immediately. And I know it sounds, I can hear how revolutionary it sounds. And sometimes when I say it, Elisa just says, Ed, and I say, but it is the truth. And the truth sets you free. Look, Colin Kaepernick kneeling down, and it caused more problems than anything else, right? He loses his job, becomes some sort of poster boy. Nike think it's fantastic. They take him on. And the NFL who kicked him out have now had to come back and pledge, and pledge money to that guy there. And then we see our guy used the very same symbol of a knee to kill a black man in plain sight with his hands in his pocket, looking at you and going, what are you going to do about it? Well, now you know, don't you?
Literally looking into the camera. And I made the comment about the 4 policemen, but apparently somebody bumped into one of them in a shop.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And I said, look, those guys right now, they're kind of trying to understand what happened.
I'm not bothered about them. I'm only bothered about him. I don't need them. Me personally, I don't need them. God will judge them. I need Derek Chauvin. I need him because he had history. He worked in a nightclub, and in the nightclub, my boy George was his supervisor and used to have to pay him. Yeah. And that is what was played out. So it wasn't about an arrest. It wasn't about that. It was, so far as I could see, yeah.
And there's a word that's missing: premeditation.
Well, that's my line, Paul. You know the line, and I walk.
That's the word. Look, Eddie, we're going on. I wanna ask you a couple more questions about some of the charity stuff, because I know you're involved in charities. I walked in to do a training session probably about 17 years ago.
Yes, I remember that.
In South London.
Often, that's why I remember.
When I looked in the group of people to get that mentor training, it was one Mr. Eddie Nestor, who's now, I like to say that my only friend with an MBE. The amount of kudos I get just saying I know you.
I don't, Paul. Stop. So
Yeah,
I know what you're doing.
I'm lying. You're right. I'm lying.
Right. Go on. Move on. Jog on.
So talk to me about the charity work, why you choose the charities you have chosen and some of the causes that you've done.
Well, even that has been a journey. We found a piece of paper the other day, and my first charity event was for sickle cell and thalassemia in 1990 it was, and it was at Dougie's, and I had Angie was there actually. I had stars from Desmond's, all sorts of places there. And we raise money for sickle cell, which is, as you know, an incredibly debilitating illness. Sickle cell mainly Africans and Caribbeans, thalassemia mainly people from a Mediterranean background. And I suppose I've always wanted to do something, but I've never known why. And it wasn't really, if I'm honest with you, until I got sick that I understood it. So I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2007. And I made a deal, as you do, that if I survived, I would do much more for charity. Now, the thing about charity is that I've met the best people in my life through the positive work that I've done. And I read a book which said that doing good things for people makes you feel better about yourself. And it does. If you see somebody who's struggling to cross the road, an old lady, somebody who you help, and you do that, you feel as though you carried out your civic duty. You feel as though you've done something good, which is why, you know, I'm just in awe of people like Stormzy and Marcus Rashford in particular, because they have committed to making a change as young kings that, regardless of whatever is happening, the backdrop to this is positive things done by Black kings, right? For me, that's what I see. And we climbed the mountain, Kilimanjaro. I met people. We went out. There was nobody who didn't help me, and we raised £40,000 for charity. I jumped out of a plane. I ran the marathon and gave the money to African Caribbean Leukemia Trust. I did something that I didn't even know I could do, which is to get a six-pack and to donate that money to diabetes, because diabetes is the secret killer, particularly of people of color. Type 2 diabetes, 10% of the people go blind. We know. For my first trip to the Caribbean, I said, "Mummy, why are there so many people with 1 foot?" And I realized that, you know, many people with diabetes lose a limb. Now, the thing about diabetes is many people feel that it's kind of trivial. It's not really that bad and whatever. It is really bad. And actually, it's the one that is reversible in terms of what you eat, how you eat, when you eat, and the amount that you eat. So we did that. But to be honest with you, after 2016, I realized that I don't want to raise money, with all due respect to all of those charities, Save Urban Synergy. Well, no, Urban Synergy fits perfectly into this, actually. I only want to dedicate my time, any money I raise at any point will only be for one thing, and that's the empowerment of the young kings on the street. Because for me to be living in London, for me to be on the radio, for me to be the father of 2 Black boys, and not 100% acknowledge the challenges on that street is ridiculous. There is no issue for me that's more important. There's no issue that's more pressing. There's no, you know, I've interviewed the mayor and the commissioner. They both know what I think. I'm working towards something to develop an idea. I was with you in a school where I saw, under the banner of Urban Synergy, professionals, Black, white, young, old, pilots, doctors, students, nurses, teachers come together with a year group where they had to dress up, do their CV, talk. I felt, I don't know how you felt, Paul, but I was like,
it was an awesome day.
Whoa,
Awesome.
Whoa,
Absolutely awesome day.
This is it. And the thing about that day, you know, is that when I was going back to work in the cab, I interviewed the teacher, and then the deputy teacher explained to me how empowered those children were. Children who'd never worn suits, who never dressed up, who never thought of themselves as being something or having the ability to be something. And in a way, sometimes parents and teachers are just too familiar. You need somebody on the outside to recognize something. You understand that? We all know that. And I just thought, well, I know that there are, because I'm approached by them, thousands and thousands of Londoners who, appropriately checked and appropriately coached, could, under the banner of Urban Synergy or the mayor, because let him have it. It doesn't matter to me. As long as we save people, I'm not interested in that. Bring people together and say, we haven't got any money to pay you, but these people don't want money. They want safer streets. They want their children to be safe. And we will, you know, partition it up in terms of where you go, the schools that you go to, the people that you influence. And we have an army, imagine an army of 10,000 professionals connecting with you. You tell me that isn't going to make a difference, Paul. I dare you. I challenge you and it's simple.
And this is the reason why I want to talk to people like yourself, because you get it. And you don't just get it because intellectually you get it because you've done it, you've seen it, you've seen the effect, you've seen the look. You know, we were standing side by side when we saw the look on those young people's faces. And as you said, just for them, not just to see examples of what they could be, but for them to start down that road, the wearing of the suits, to present all the range and all the professionals that were in the room that day. And you know, I jokingly say this, but one of the things that I consistently say is about the value of role models. And there are values of role models in everybody's life. And I think it would be remiss of me to finish this interview without saying what a role model you are. Yeah, we listen to you in the evenings. Even if I don't text you during the show every day, we listen to you and we see you walking that line. Yeah, I hear it in your voice. I hear you walking that line. Yeah. I'm outing you that way. I hear you walking that line because you got a family to feed, you got a job to keep, you got all of that. And I just want you to know what we really appreciate the work that you do. But
it's all levels, Paul. I'm watching you on a Sunday. I'm watching the people within the pandemic, because we've not even mentioned that. I'm watching people try to do things on Facebook, try to do exercise classes, mindfulness, playing music. You know, people are trying to survive, and I applaud every single one of them. Everybody's trying to do their best, right?
Yeah, man. I have a question for you. How did Mommy feel about the MBE?
Funny enough, hold on a minute, just bear with me. Funny enough, this is where I told you Mrs. Nestor's rebuilt the house, right? So we've not got the library. So this is the makeshift office. So there's a picture of a medal that's going around, and I was absolutely certain.
Oh, yes.
I was absolutely certain on Sunday that it would come up, but we got taken down the road of Windrush, and appropriately because it's Windrush Day and Father's Day, or was. And I found it. It took me is that upside down? It took me ages, but I found it, because it's not the sort of thing that in my head, no, we're not really like, I still haven't watched the video from the day. We're not really like that. And I knew that it wasn't, but
you had to check.
No. And listen, as I say to you, reading is important, right? And I looked at that story and I looked at how it had started as an angel devil thing. And it absolutely personifies why personally I never used the word white as good and I never used the word black as bad, ever. I never do, because language is real. I speak for a living and I understand the importance of words. And whoever came out with the nonsense that sticks and stones can break your bones, but words can never hurt you is an idiot. Because words, I can tell you words now will stay with you for the rest of your life. And I've told you words that were said to me 40 years ago. I can't remember any slap I got with a belt or whatever. So I think that the personification of white as good and black as evil is something that we have to challenge. I have to challenge. But my mum is very proud. I think, you know, I had a lot of soul searching because I understand empire, and I understand it more than ever now. I understand, you know, Christopher Columbus was a rapist and a murderer. I understand that Edward Colston killed 20,000 people before they'd even arrived in Bristol. I understand it, and there is a part of me that I'm a Gemini. But I reasoned, and I'll say it publicly, that I am not proud of empire, and I lobby for Britain to tell the full history. But history is written by the victor is always glorified. That the work that I could do here now with this is something that I would take the hit for. And the work that I have been able to do, the people I have been able to contact, and the things I have been able to do, but I'm not comfortable, and I'm increasingly uncomfortable, if I'm honest with you. But rightly or wrongly, that's a decision I made.
Look, I'm not in a position to judge. My position is this: is that if I see somebody without one doing equal or better, then fair enough. But until then, you know what? Each do their own bit and piece. I'm gonna wrap this up. I'd just like to ask you, of all the things you've done, all the projects you've been involved in, what's your favorite?
The weird thing is that Urban Synergy, the only, although I have been asked now to be an ambassador for Mind because, you know, I do a lot of work in mental health, and a friend of mine killed himself, and I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm embarrassed. And again, looking at that, I've learned that there's a lot of black guys in their 50s who feel as though they haven't done what they thought they would do. They're not the men they thought they would be, and they don't see a positive future. So what's the point? And we don't talk, you know, in the groups, we'll talk about big batty girl, football, rare, but how you're feeling, what you're doing. We're supposed to be the most charismatic, macho guys in the world. We play on that, and we're not. We're vulnerable, we're sad, and we need help. We need to help each other. So having said that, I wish I could do more for Urban Synergy. And maybe if I can talk to the mayor who has recently recognized his own mental health. He's talked about how he cries. He feels like he wishes he could do more. And if I can get to him while he's still mayor, because there's an election soon, and if we can get that mentor thing off the ground, that will be the, I can then go and die in a corner. That would be the singer's, apart from remaining married, it would be the singer's greatest accomplishment of my life.
Look, Eddie, it's a great pleasure speaking to you. I think it's a great place for us to end. I thank you for your time, and I thank you for your service, as they say in the US. Thank you for your service.